The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories.
Because it is not the government of the people any longer.
Circus ridiculous.
A new world order. A world where the rule of law governs the conduct of nations.
Most people do not understand the Illuminati.
It's all about control.
Conspiracy theories.
It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
A new world order.
Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
It's the Weekend Vigilante Show.
Well, hello, listeners, and welcome to the Weekend Vigilante Show. I'm your host, Sheila Zilinsky, for May 1st, 2014. I need to start off by saying this, folks. It takes a tremendous amount of work to bring my listeners a top-notch show with only the most sought-after cutting-edge guests week after week, and never before today have I ever asked for your financial support for my ministry, but today I'm asking. So please go to my website, weekendvigilante.com, and you can click the donate button there. And if you're blessed by the show, please do what you can, and I thank you in advance for your support and generosity to keep this show going. And speaking of cutting-edge guests, ladies and gentlemen, what a privilege it is for me to introduce this guest. You all know him as a former Saturday host of the Coast to Coast AM. He's a veteran radio host and internationally renowned voice actor with credits ranging from radio stations and TV shows to movies, advertisements on all 7 continents. John B. Wells, welcome to the program.
It's so nice to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
That voice, John. John, I mean, you are really a highly acclaimed, well-respected radio host, and for that one-of-a-kind, cool, deep baritone vibrato, the man with the voice, you've been interviewed, and you've interviewed so many amazing people. You know, you've chatted with some of our most brilliant minds, the esoteric, the paranormal, the eccentric, the real eclectic mishmash, if you will, of people. Do you have a favorite interview, John?
You know, it was one of the shortest interviews, but it was, I don't know, you know, there have been so many great people out there, but I have to say that hearing Ray Bradbury, when I read something to him from the Martian Chronicles, say, oh, my, I heard you read that, and I thought, my God, did I write that? That was like being handed 2 Academy Awards while standing at the podium. It really was. And while we didn't get to discuss many of the things that we could have, because he was in his late 80s at the time, but he was still, you know, sharp as a tack. Still, somehow, just being able to connect just over the telephone and to broadcast that conversation with Ray Bradbury, such a great visionary and such a great person, was probably, it has to be my all-time favorite.
Really profound. What a great guest. Well, let me ask you this. What's the least favorite interview you've ever done?
Well, I'm going to have to say it was and bless his heart, I'm sure he's probably all right. I mean, I think it's just a job for him more than anything. But it was this guy who was a self-professed Satanist. And as the interview went on, it's like, really, you want me to interview a Satanist? It's like, well, yeah, you know, it's a variety show. I said, yeah, okay, I'll interview the man in the moon if you want me to. But okay. Well,
I bet that was really interesting.
Well, it was. I mean, to a point. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to do this, guess what, pal? You're going to sit and chair the whole 4 hours with me. So that's what we did.
Well, as long as he wasn't speaking in backwards Romanian or something on your show doing a chant.
No, it just was almost silly because, you know, the man told me that he'd come from a pretty well-to-do family. And it's like, well, then why would you want to do this thing? Why you become a Satanist guy?
Right.
Well, because he wanted a good lifestyle, a lot of money, and I'm thinking, you just said you already came from money. Well, you want more money, and you know he'll do a hooba juba for you, whatever that might actually be. That's not really a name. I just made it up for $750 or something, and I'm thinking, wow, this is not really it, you know.
Right.
So Yeah, I have no interest in Satanists really, other than studying what they do once they get into politics, and if they have some Luciferian leanings or rely on symbology to bring about these things that they then foist upon the unsuspecting populace. Other than that, I don't care about any of those things.
Voodoo and
Santeria or any of it.
Well, and in all your history, what's the most to-date memorable thing that's happened on air?
The most memorable thing that happened on air? Well, I must say, I was talking with quite a famous screenwriter named Tom Shadyac, and a very angry man called. I don't really remember the content of his speeches, but he was twisted out of shape. He really was. And Tom just talked him right down, calmed him right down, turned him around, and sent him on his way. A lot happier than he was when he called the program. I really admired Tom's way of just taking this totally hot potato and not burning his hands and getting it over to the plate and serve it up for dinner. And it was just excellent to just watch him deftly and gently, yet firmly, just guide this man back onto a happy path and take him off of this unhappy path.
Wow, that's quite a skill in itself.
Yeah, I really thought it was. So when you asked me that question, he's the one that came to mind. I haven't had any contact with Tom before or since.
It's interesting because as you were talking there, you said these guys want me to bring on a Satanist. I mean, we in the new media know that you were under a very watchful eye of the who's who. Were you surprised at the growing lack of autonomy and the thin latitude that was given to you, or did you kind of come over the years to expect that treading on certain territory might trigger no-go zones, for lack of a better word, with the top brass at coast to coast?
Sheila, if I understand your question accurately, I pretty much ignored it. I really did, because I'm just one of those people that's never been. I don't play well with the other children sometimes, depending on the group that I'm in. And while I kept everything very cordial and friendly, I kind of did what I wanted to anyway. I didn't want to go to the point where it's like, that's it, we're blowing them out.
Yeah.
But still, when you reach a point where you're responsible not only for what comes out of your own mouth, but also what may come out of a guest's mouth, and when you get a comment about this, and then you say, well, listen, if you don't want anybody criticizing this president, or you don't want anybody criticizing the liberal agenda, stop booking them on the program. That's all you have to do. I didn't book these people. You did. So if you don't want us to talk about these things, then I got to where I would just tell people, listen, do not speak the last name of the president.
Right.
Do not. Of course, now, if somebody wanted to use terms like a teabagger and right-wing this and right-wing crazies and gun nuts and this and that, that was perfectly okay. So by the time it's all over with, I've said this before. I said this on Henrik Palmgren's program. As long as we can keep it in the realm of the nebulous, and as long as we can talk about things which cannot be proved, then we're fine. But if we actually get into anything that requires attention that is of some moment in our current situation, then, we have to be very, very politically correct. And I think political correctness is probably most responsible for the condition we find ourselves in, with a government that's absolutely teeming with criminals, opportunists, and maybe even a sociopath here or two. And my question is to a lot of people, what kind of a president, what kind of a person would say, I'm pretty good at killing people?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how long do we have to have our noses rubbed in this matter before we determine, so that's what we're having our noses rubbed in, and recoil from it. But people seem to continue to assign some sort of magical credibility, I think it's totally imaginary, to mainstream news media particularly, and they go with that political correctness. Got to be careful not to hurt anybody's feelings, and I would submit, however gently I might put it, I think some people's feelings need to be hurt. Maybe if they're hurt bad enough, they might change their ways.
Segueing from that, I mean, you're right, political correctness has gotten completely out of hand. Really seeing an all-out war on America in all fronts here, our culture, our heritage, our technology, our values, our beliefs. It's the plundering, pilfering, pillaging. I really can only use pirate terms here to describe what's unfolding. We've moved from a soft, ambiguous tyranny to a more aggressive, full-out dictatorial tyrannical imperialism here. And look at the thousands of unconstitutional regulations, the presidential fiat, the domestic spying, the draconian police state, IRS abuses, prosecutorial abuses, the refusal to execute laws, the changing laws. The list goes on and on to the point of nausea. And America wasn't the last bastion. It's the first and only bastion of hope and freedom and liberty. And America once really, John, stood as the beacon for the world, the moral compass, if you will, the sheriff in town. The U.S. was once envied by the world for its democratic constitutional republic like none in the world. A Christian nation with deep roots in biblical principles, yet somehow we've allowed ourselves to be taken over from the inside by a group of these sociopathic, unscrupulous, out-of-control, rogue, evil charlatans who are hell-bent on destroying this country that my grandfather took a bullet in Normandy to protect it. And I mean, are we in serious trouble here, John?
Yes, we are. And however, there's a good part of this, too. Well, I think what people should remember is, just as in dealing with a bully, here he comes, all sway-backed, or as we say in the South, bowed up. Here he comes all bowed up and swaggering and cursing. And then if you just stand there and just plant yourself very relaxed and just pull your sunglasses off and look at him and say, okay, there's nothing between us but air, pal. Show me what you got. Come on. He gets a little closer. You're real calm, and you're looking at his eyes till you determine his intent. And then after that, you go to the sternum. That's just a little martial arts advice. And just look at that, because if you look at the sternum, then you can see it all. Once you look into the eyes of this adversary and you determine what the intent is held by that adversary, then you look at the heart. And from the heart, you can see all of the other limbs. You can see the feet and you can see the hands. And if you just look at the eyes, that Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid always look at eye. Well, that's fine, but only look at the eye until you determine the intent. After that, look at the heart, and you'll see it all. And you'll notice that when this bully comes swaggering up, you can see the wheels in his head turning, and what he's thinking is, gee, this person is awfully calm.
Right.
Wonder what's waiting. And then you just ask him, not so sure now, are you? Right. Why don't you just go on down the road while you still got the legs to carry you and have yourself a nice day and just forget all about this. That's the same way that evil should be confronted on the political level and any other level. You remain calm and you understand that the reason that they are swaggering and bowed up and they're so strident and they're so accusatory and they're calling names and that now they've gone from name calling to really rough insults, it's because they're scared. And they are scared. These people are in a hurry now to get their agenda pushed forward because they know that the American public is waking up. And so now it's like, well, what are we going to do? It's just exactly like what happened out at Bundy Ranch. As soon as those cowboys showed up and went, you're not doing this. Oh, yeah, they were all about pushing women around and shoving people down and pulling their tasers out. Now they got their dogs, they got their rifles, and they got all their vehicles, and they're just ready to enforce some law. Not be peace officers. They're law enforcement officers now.
Right.
And as soon as they got stood up to, they backed off and left.
So much
that's what'll happen with these cats too.
Right?
Yep. They that's Harry Reid. There's just a phone book directory, thick stack of little business dealings he's been doing over the years. And what's happened is the only people who can get over on you are people that you trust, and you must never trust a politician. You'll never meet a con man that you don't like a little bit. That is their stock in trade. And so you have to. I think all people should keep something in mind. You don't just automatically trust people. Trust and respect are earned. They don't just accrue to somebody at the first handshake. It takes time to vet this person. And respect is normally generated because you observe this person conducting themselves in a respectable manner where they take care of their business and they leave you alone. And so they, as my dad used to say, they cover all the ground that they stand on, and they don't interfere with you. But when they start meddling in your affairs, when they're in too big of a hurry to be your friend or to do business with you, that's a red light. So, or should be. So you just have to go carefully.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, yes, we've got the huckster, Harry Reid. I mean, he is just the pinnacle of a unscrupulous charlatan. And we did see what happened at with Clive and Bundy and the showdown in Nevada. But, I mean, we are really being systematically dehumanized. I mean, we're every day, I always say on my show, I mean, this is true, John, we're being taught to love our servitude while the clandestine, not even so clandestine anymore, oligarchs usurp our freedoms. They're expecting, us to just bow down to all this tyranny. It's full spectrum dominance over every area of our lives. It's, sit down, shut up, do what you're told. Don't you dare question your government or you're a terrorist. We've got a militarized police, body scanners, citizen spies, sound cannons, drones, staged terrors, massive psyops, cameras on every street corner. I mean, this is Big Brother meets draconian police state, and I don't think the American people can any longer claim ignorance on the NSA surveillance grid. Everything from our daily travel routes to our eating habits are traceable. It's a detailed, multidimensional image of our daily lives being built with this system. George Orwell's 1984 is reading more like a newspaper than a dystopic 40 novels. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with it. And, in fact, I'll tell you, some of these people really were visionaries, weren't they? What would motivate somebody to write something like that unless it was inspired on some level? But the thing to do is you just don't participate. Have these computers and these smartphones and everything else, have they really? Oh, they're fun little toys. Sure they are. It's a camera. It's a phone. It's a GPS. It's a compass. It's a flashlight. It's all these things.
Yeah.
But has it really increased productivity? No. Things run more poorly now than they did before, because we rely on these devices to do these things for us to the point where this is the best example that I think I can give you. I think it might be a worthy example. I was talking to somebody the other day and said, well, let me have your contact number. It's like, I'll send you an email and all that. And I said, no, the Internet has made me really spoiled, so I want you to just tell me the number now and I'll write it down. I don't even want to go to my computer, fire up the email and look for the email, blah, 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 blah. Just give me the number. It's like, okay, done deal in 10 seconds instead of how many minutes would it take me to go fire this thing up, get in, log in, password, and all this, and then give me your number. Just give it to me now. And I think that's what we need to return to, more of an analog style of living and just dump this digital stuff. And people quit buying stuff that you want to go away. If you don't want GMO food, stop buying it. And somebody said the other day, actually I think it was Dr. Thierry Vrain. He is French. He's up in Vancouver now, and
right.
And he's a real no kidding genetic engineer. This guy is a genius level genetic engineer. And he's like, well, if one person goes to the market and says, really wish you wouldn't sell this GMO food anymore, that's not going to have much effect. But when 1,000 people do it or 100 people do it, now they're going to start listening. If you want people to change their behavior, hit them where it'll get their attention. Hit them in their pocketbook.
It reminds me of that. It reminds me of that little, it's a Bug's Life. It's a little Disney cartoon that, the leader says, you let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. These puny little ants outnumber us by 100 to 1. And if they ever find that out, there goes our way of life. And I thought it was really interesting in a Disney cartoon. But you're right. I mean, I like declaring, say, a moratorium on spending on whatever it is, GMO foods or Walmart, or 5% of us, John said, no, we're not going to shop here anymore. There is power in numbers, and I think that's the problem. So you just mentioned GMO food, and you're right, people are waking up, but I don't know if it is the GMO food or the BPA or the fluoridation and the chemicals in our water or the big pharma that everybody's hopped up on, or the chemtrails, or a combination of all of it, but for the most part, we have got a dumbed-down, zombified public walking around in a dystopic trance, acquiescing to this thing, shrugging their shoulders while Rome burns around us. And, I mean, look at, you mentioned cell phones in this zombie apocalypse where everybody's sitting around staring at a screen. There's an outright attack, though, on our family, our kids, our marriages, our education system, our churches. The mega churches, you better just, pay your tithe and take the rules, you take the regulations. We've got a vehemently morally bankrupt society. I mean, anybody looking at a primetime TV lineup or walk through a big box store, 50 shades of mind-numbing filth. This is Sodom and Gomorrah on steroids to me. And as you step back and take a macro view, John, what troubles you the most as you look around?
Diversity, this pollution and dilution of our culture through what the left-wing extremists call diversity. if some character, somebody, I don't even want to call his name because it'll give him recognition, somebody up there in Congress said that anybody who objects to Barack Obama's policies are just flat out racist. Well, that's nonsense. I really think the first thing, I'm not really sure if I'm answering your question here, Sheila, but first thing that we need to do is we need to decide, look, this is our country. But I don't want to hear any more about, you took it away from the Native Americans. Okay. Well, we supposedly took the land from England too, but that was because they were trying to tax us too much. Like, hey, that's all ancient history. Let's play this ball from where it lays. Yeah. What we need to do is we need to close these borders, emphasize English, and as a matter of fact, teach proper English. When people say, that's very concerning to me, it's like, what do you mean by that exactly? Do you mean it is a matter of grave concern to you? No, it's very concerning to me. Well, that's improper English. So what we have now is not only are we trying to accommodate everybody, which you can't do. One day, perhaps our society will be so perfect that nobody will fall through the cracks, so to speak. Everyone will be attended to. But when we look at these models of other countries like, well, the Swiss do this and the Finns do that, and what about the Norwegians? What about the Swedes? That's fine. Those are small countries that have really high outputs of gross domestic product. Yeah. Socialistic system will work over there because everything, they can afford to take care of everything, and even after they tax everybody, there's still plenty left over, and they have what? A good life, a good lifestyle. But when you're when you have an unhealthy lifestyle, and you're trying to accommodate everybody, if you're down to your last $100 but you've got 50 people or 60 people a day hitting you up for $1, well, before long you're going to be broke yourself, and it'll be you asking for dollars. We need to mind our own business, like that old Steppenwolf song, "Monster." Yeah. It's a great song, it really is, and the whole one of the lines that John Kay sings in that song is, "We can't seem to mind our own business. The whole world has to be just like us." No, they don't. And the thing is this is the ruse. This is the lie. This is the sleight of hand that has been worked against us because we're now a nation of consumers. What does it say about us that we're 5% of the world's population, and yet we take 50% of the world's drugs? Seriously, between the fluoride and the chlorine, the GMOs and the chemtrails and all the Wi-Fi and all the electromagnetic radiation that's in the air, not to mention anything else, then you add pharmaceuticals to this, and when you deal with somebody who is mentally retarded, meaning not advanced, they have not advanced. They have been, you retard your ignition timing, you advance your ignition timing. It doesn't, retard, you call somebody retarded? It's like, no, their thinking is retarded, meaning it's not advanced. It's pulled back. When you deal with a person who is mentally retarded, what level do you eventually have to deal with them on? Answer, the emotional level. And that is what's happening to us. You cannot be logical. You cannot be rational. You must deal with them on an emotional level. And the more you push rationality and logic on them, the more they resist. Well, this is because they're not developed to the point where their CPU is running at the same rate that yours is or mine is. So that's what's happening now. As you said, the society is being dumbed down, and we're being dealt with and directed via emotional input rather than any kind of rational or logical input. Thing there, it's like, oh no, we don't object to his policies. It's not that his policies are flawed. It's not that China's going to pass us as the number one economy in the world. It's not that we're blowing up all kinds of people and calling it collateral damage when we're after some imaginary terrorist somewhere. No, we object to our president's policies because he's half African American or whatever he might be. Oh, no, it's all racist, you see. Well, that's just a card they're playing to try and play on us emotionally. It's got nothing. Nobody cares if he's black or half black or if he's all black. We just want somebody to run this thing. We don't care if he's green with an Einstein hairdo and a glass eye. We don't care. We just want somebody that'll be honest. In fact, you show us somebody who is that guy, what's his name, David Spade, said tore up from the floor up. And if this person performs we admire that person even more than if he came in with no, or she came in with all of their faculties, and they're very attractive people and very articulate. You take somebody who's inarticulate but honest, and who is effective rather than ineffective, might not have the best fashion sense, might not have the smoothest manner of speaking, but they're good at what they do and they really care about people. We're going to go with that person. You know, so for anybody to accuse this country or to be not colorblind, well, I think they're just misguided and they're malicious. And
then don't forget, you're a racist if you ever just call them out on being a Marxist megalomaniac minion. You really are dealing with a very fervent extirpation of our Constitution. When patriotism marks you as a terrorist or an undesirable, and you declare that, say, you believe in the United States Constitution, well, guess what, John? That makes you a radical or some perceived type of threat. And, hey, it's okay to say an Arabic prayer, because you better not say Jesus now, because you might offend someone. You know, there's an even more fervent all-out war in Christianity, and a soft kill culling. And I really believe it's only the beginning of the New World Order's hellish eugenics depopulation plan. But things are coming at us really fast and furious. Are you surprised, John, at this warp speed acceleration you see? Because you just see really crazy headlines once or twice a month, but now it's just daily.
Yeah. Well, like I say, they're scared. They thought they had it in the bag, but they don't. The alternative media is probably one of the greatest things that ever happened to this country. And frankly, I must tell you that I think Barack Obama is one of the best things that ever happened to this country, just not for the reason someone might think I would say something like that. This is the specter of your future under socialism, or worse, communofascism. Yeah. Have a little taste. Chew it up good and tell me, how do you like it? Well, guess what? This is just the beginning. If this is left unchecked, now you're going to find out what it's like to have lived in the old Soviet Union. You're going to find out what it was like to be a Jew in Nazi Germany. Yeah. You know, somebody said the other day, it's 1936 and we are all Jews now. And I thought, I get your point there. I really do. But everybody is entitled to be different. So what is this? Whatever happened to the Patrick McGowan Prisoner series doctrine of the right of the individual to be individual?
Right.
What happened to that? Oh, no, now we have to all be the same. I mean, these hippies, I threw this rock and roll forum one time. I called it the Rock and Roll Roundtable. It wasn't really a roundtable because we weren't all on at the same time. But got Paul Rogers from Bad Company and Leslie West from Mountain. He was third. Second was Jack Cassidy from The Airplane. And the fourth was Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull. And Ian was excellent. He really was. Everybody was fine, but I was trying to rediscover rediscover the revolutionary spirit. What was going on? Well, at the end of the line, only Ian Anderson really came up with anything, and it wasn't really in the groove that I wanted him in, but it was simply that. In the end, apart from any philosophical ditherings and witterings that we might indulge ourselves in the end, it was all about having a draft. If we had a draft right now, you can bet that there'd be a whole lot more anti-war protesters out there in the streets going, hell no, we won't go, just like in the old days. But now you have a volunteer army, and while we're on this subject just for a moment, does it get anybody's attention that all these special forces guys are killing themselves to the point where we have more deaths from suicide than we have from combat?
That's right.
And I'm not buying it. I don't believe they're all suicide. Not at all. Any more than I believe these bankers that just decide, I know what we'll do. Let's jump off a roof today. What is it with these bankers jumping from roofs? Well, just uncovered this story that actually J.P. Morgan Chase is the one that has lost the most bankers to suicide.
Well, and nothing to see here, folks, according to Clown News Network and MSNBC, and their numbers are tanking, and yet it's just crickets chirping in the news media about this trail of dead banksters. No tie into Deutsche Bank or J.P. Morgan Chase. Nothing to see here, folks. Does that surprise you at all?
No, not in the least, because they're bought and paid for. The CIA is all over the place. The CIA is when we go into a little banana republic, little country somewhere, and they got something that we want. Yeah. We try and do it the easy way with the bribe, and if we have to do it the hard way, then we go through the CIA and we have them removed, we have them assassinated. But here's the deal on the bankers. They take out insurance policies on their own bankers. And a lot of times the bankers don't even know there's an insurance policy, a life insurance policy that's been written on them. The life insurance policy is payable to the bank. So if Harry messed up a deal, cost us about $10 million. But we like Harry because he's a connected guy. But Don, he's not as connected. Let's dump Don, and he'll make up. And we'll get rid of Susie too. And between those two, the payoff will make up for the first guy, the connected guy's losses. That's what they're doing. It appears. It appears that's what they're doing. Writing insurance policies on their own bankers and cashing them in upon their death. Now, that's an unusual policy because usually suicide, a life insurance company won't pay off.
Right.
But they do if J.P. Morgan and Citibank, Citigroup, if they write it. And Citibank or Citigroup and J.P. Morgan Chase have almost the same number of employees, 250-something thousand for J.P. Morgan Chase and 241-something thousand in the Citigroup. But the most people that are being rubbed out here are out of J.P. Morgan Chase.
Right, and yet these unscrupulous charlatans at the helm, they never stop. I don't know who it was that accused the USA of living off their printing press. I mean, the Fed just keeps churning out the money. And there's Janet Yellen, I call her Miss Keynesianism, Yes Lady, Bernanke 2.0 in the skirt, whatever you want to call her, because we know all hell is breaking out in the economic world here, John. You know, you got Moscow just last week saying, you know, Russians' biggest state-controlled mega oil producers, they're going to use euros as a settlement currency. They're moving away from the dollar, and Russia's pretty much giving us a finger saying, we don't want to play with your dollar anymore. And like China, India, Brazil, others going along with that, you remove all that international payment system from dependency on the dollar, boom, the death of the dollar. I mean, there's a lot going on here. And do you find it interesting that, you know, we're not even being cited anymore. We're being vetted as the Forex fraud, the bond fraud, the gold fraud. It just never stops, does it, really, with this cartel?
Well, it doesn't. And the United States, I think even more dangerously, is being put in the position of looking like the universal bad guy. And therefore, if we get smacked, nobody is going to weep for us because we are the purveyors of all this misery throughout the world. I mean, look, the German Dynamite Nobel Corporation gave Barack Obama the Nobel Prize for what? Yeah. I mean, if they were really on the level, and they're not because they're an arms company, they're the ones that invented dynamite. Mm-hmm. That's the Nobel Prize. Many people don't know that, but Dynamite Nobel, that's the crew. If they had wanted to give the Nobel Prize to the United States for being a nation of color blindness and equal opportunity and, you know, having overcome all this slavery, which is almost a couple of hundred years ago now, and all this other stuff, that would have been one thing. And the Germans are over there writing operas for him and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, they're not writing operas about him now.
No.
In other words, the whole world got suckered into this, but it was mostly the media in those countries that sucked them into it.
We were talking about Harry Reid earlier. I mean, people have to wrap their head around this. Forget a desert tortoise here. I mean, you know, you get all good Harry Reid traipsing off to China back in 2011. He inks this partnership with the NN Energy Group. It's 100% owned by the Chinese government. Really clever scheme to sell off below market value of valuable land, mineral, and water rights to communist China. Oh, that's good. So we can set up these large investment zones within America, and they're controlled by communist China corporations. So, you know, just as we see foreign countries owning the toll roads and the ports throughout USA, and back to the George W. Bush administration, John, the Chinese were completely prohibited from buying interest in ports, but of course, though, Obama, you know, reversed that. But we continue to pour all this money, like $1 trillion some dollars in the Chinese. The interest on that's mounting daily, and you've even alluded to this on shows. I mean, there just doesn't seem like there's any end in sight of these guys running deficits, borrowing from the Chinese. I mean, it just seems to me like we've been completely bought out by foreign nations. I mean, I don't know what's next, having a huge fire sale like Greece where, you know, the vultures pick off the scraps. When the inflation comes home to roost, I mean, what happens when that happens, John?
I don't know, but the 1920s in Germany comes to mind. Here's the thing. Yeah. None of these guys, none of this Nazi stuff ever went away.
No.
It never went away. It just morphed into different forms. As a matter of fact, a guy came on who was talking about the Nazi connection. He'd never had his email hacked before in his life. He's had the same address for a long time. Oh, they're mad now. They're mad because they're being outed. And the thing is that this should give people hope. But I just don't want them to place their hope in us, people in the alternative media.
Right.
They need to place their hope. They need to place their faith in God, and they need to place their hope in each other, and proceed from there. Because the more the citizenry wakes up and understands, if you want something to go away, stop buying it, and it will.
Yeah.
A fellow came on the program today, came on Caravan to Midnight today, and said that he lives up in New Hampshire, and they put a Walmart in there, and nobody came, and the Walmart closed. End of story. Quit buying it. You know, you drive off car lot with your new car, and the guy hands you your keys and gives you that smug look, and then tells you, come back and see me next year. Where do you see the new model for this one? It's going to make this one that you just bought look like a real piece of junk.
Yeah.
You know, but come back and see me. Just, you know, you don't have to participate in this. If everybody were to just go, you know what, it's going to be a little bit tough, but we're caught up here, we'll be fine. We're not going to do anything. We're going to spend no money with any of these companies that support bad environmental practices, bad health practices. We're not going to buy any of this stuff for 30 days. These people would be in so much trouble you wouldn't believe it. We haven't done any business in 30 days. Just cut them off. Yeah. And yet, people know that banks like Wells Fargo, Citibank, Chase, Bank of America, they're poison.
Yeah.
They're poison. They keep banking in there. Well, I'm with Chase, but I just haven't moved my account. It's like, and I get in their faces and I say, well, why haven't you? What's the matter with you? You talk the talk, but you won't walk the walk. And you, and what you just said, I hate to tell you this, I know it's going to make you mad and hurt your feelings, but you are the problem. You remember Full Metal Jacket?
Yes, that movie, yeah.
All right. I like to say this in the manner of Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. I have tried to support him, but I have failed. I have failed because you have not helped me. You people have not shown this president the proper motivation. Therefore, from now on, whenever little Barry screws up, I will not blame him. I will blame all of you. And the way I see it, you owe me for one beat-up republic. Now get on your faces. You're paying for it. You might as well eat it. And I mean it.
Yeah, isn't that...
It's our fault. We elected them.
Yeah.
It's our fault that we keep putting these same senators and congressmen back in there year after year, and every one of them, well, I'm not going to say every one of them, but the vast majority of them leave political life as millionaires. Now, how did that happen? How did it happen that they're exempted from the very so-called health care program that they want to foist on us?
Right.
And why are people not outraged? If they're not outraged, if they don't go with that toujours l'audace, always audacity, if they don't roll with that, they're done. And if enough of the American public does not get with the program, it's over. Are they so selfish? Are we so selfish that we don't even care what's going to happen to our kids? Oh, it's so bad. I just can't get it. I can't get it going on. What do you see on TV? Drug ad after drug ad after drug ad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking to you, Fox News, followed by the legal company that if you've suffered dismemberment or death as a result of taking this medication for making your toenails beautiful, you may be entitled to money damages. I mean, where is sanity here? Now, I like Fox News better than the other ones, but I'm not in love with them because it's still Mr. Ailes calling the shots up there as to what gets reported and what doesn't. They took Judge Napolitano's show off the air. He's still, a contributing character, but he doesn't have his own show anymore.
No, that's right.
Alex Jones. Alex is radical. He's a bulldog. I get it. People say, well, I don't know. Is he on our side or their side or what's up with him? Well, I don't know. But either way, he just did this big expose on Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck's not looking too good right now. He's got a CIA guy named Buck somebody that was with the agency from 2005 to 10. There's CIA all over the place. And we all have seen that just recently the FCC wanted to put watchers in all the newsrooms to determine, well, why do you think this story is important to run? You are in the midst of a modern-day Nazi takeover. Resist now or don't squawk about it later because you let it happen.
You're absolutely right because, think about this, what we're seeing. Bloomberg recently ramped up the gun grab. He's announcing his big $50 million new gun grab plan. But, let's connect the dots here. There's 500,000 troops on our soil, more to come. Think about it. Hitler took the guns and Mao took the guns, Stalin. It's just amazing to me. And you're right. we've allowed it. And I think the bigger piece is if you link this all together. You mentioned the Warsaw Ghetto. What's your thoughts on this gun grabbing? Because this feels like Auschwitz 2.0 on steroids. I mean, is that what we're talking about?
I think it's a distinct possibility and perhaps even a likelihood. I think what we're dealing with here is an oligarchy. Mm-hmm. I mean, take Prince Philip, for example.
Well, if I were to be reincarnated, I would want to come back as a virus because humanity is a plague on the earth.
Of course, he's not talking about himself being a plague on the earth.
He can start with himself, John.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The thing is that I believe what we're headed toward here, given the marvelous advances, you talk about advanced propulsion systems, all this stuff totally exists already. Totally exists already. I don't want to just go blowing this stuff out all over the place, but a real smart guy came on CTM and explained that with one of our aircraft, our military aircraft, those engines can be shut down, and the electrical field that's developed over its wings becomes the propulsion system. You can shut the engines off and keep going with just the electrical wave that's been generated over its wings. We know that the UFOs are real. Well, they are. Just everybody should go to YouTube and just type in the search box, President Truman mentions flying saucers. That's all you got to do, and you'll see him say something about it. So I think what they want, I think they want to depopulate the planet, and then roll out all these wonderful technologies, genetically engineer future generations, so that they can have them look and think and be exactly what they want. I mean, hot and cold running, everything from chefs to hookers. Seriously. The eye color that they want, everything else. They want to roll out this new technology, depopulate 80% of the planet, and then with their wonderful apparati, being able to get from here to there and over there just almost in the blink of an eye, they will have free roaming access to the entire planet, enjoy all of its resources, and not put up with the great unwashed, and that would be us. That's what they want. These technologies exist. Marvelous alternative fuels and power sources exist now and have existed for probably 50 or 60 years. But they're not going to give them to us. We didn't get fax machines, just for a rudimentary example.
Right.
We didn't get fax machines until about 85.
That's
well,
right.
The Navy had them since the 50s. They were the size of a washing machine, but the device was actually invented in the 1800s. And that's a fact.
What you're talking about is, I mean, you've touched on so many things, eugenics,
transhumanism. That's what I did, I'm sorry.
I mean, you know, it's amazing to me. I had Daniel Estolin on, and he wrote a very interesting book, and there's actually a defense document that it's now been swept from the internet, but I do have a hard copy of it. And, you know, this is not something out of a Mary Shelley Frankenstein or Gene Roddenberry film. This is real-life sci-fi, because go grab yourself a copy of the front page of Time magazine. 2045, John, is the year that man becomes immortal. You know, I mean, we're talking about post-humanism as we know it, where the plan is to sort of incrementally move the human mind into a more futuristic vehicle, not bodies, vehicles. You know, first from a humanoid robot, and if you go to 2045.com, DARPA's funding all these human augmentation projects around the world in the name of improving performance in humans, John, because we're too fat, dumb, slow. Hedonistic hucksters actually believe they're going to achieve immortality, and of course you see that what's new in the movies, good old Johnny Depp, transcendence is Ray Kurzweil come to life. I mean, are we facing the end of humanity as we know it, really?
Well, that's a really good question. The possible answers are multitudinous. But I think, look, crazy is crazy. Whether it's in a white lab coat, if it's over there at the sulking over there at Clubhouse with the other bikers that are criminals, you know, in this particular gang that we're talking about. I saw this thing one time where a guy came in. It was a Russian. It was one of my favorite shows of all time called MI5. They call it Spooks in England. It's overnight. Peter Firth is the main guy. Yeah. And this Russian, he's the guy that played Boris the Blade in Snatch. Every time you need an older Russian guy, it's this guy. I don't even know what his name is, but he's in all kinds of movies. He always plays himself. Yeah. And this banker, this little fragile English banker said, "You're insane." And he said, "No, I do what I want. The vast sums of money make everything possible." And that's the key. The vast sums of money make everything possible. So you're going to have some psychos out there that are real mad scientists. They have this mad vision for the world. They think we're just meat puppets. And frankly, I can see how they might think that from their lofty perch. They don't care about the so-called workers. They don't care about it at all. In the future, they'd like them to be genetically engineered. I popped off one time on Coast and said, you want to get rid of your labor problems and your vacation days and your sick days and your raises and your pensions and all that stuff? How about we fire you and replace you with a robot and send in a technician once every 3 months to make sure it's running right and tweak it up a little bit and then leave. We'll give him a couple of grand for his time and that's it. And by giving him $2,000 for the hour that he spent there just checking your circuit boards and so forth or whatever they're going to run on in the future, we'll save $2 million. I think the $2,000 is well worth the investment. The $2,000 is worth the investment if we save $2 million. That's what they want. They want the world to themselves.
When we're seeing entire squadrons of robot planes and entire fleets of these robot-driven military vehicles, I mean, this is a total genetic rewrite of creation, what these guys are talking about, completely dehumanizing the entire planet as we know it.
You're absolutely
right. And then
right.
throw in some geoengineering there because there's not enough salt filings to fire, and because we got to, do something with the climate crisis. Because Al Gore is turning out a new inconvenient tube to propagate bigger, better lies now because he didn't quite get enough people buying into the. We used to call it weather, and now it's climate crisis.
Yeah, Al Gore, the inconvenient blimp in the room. He's such a fraud. I'm sorry. My opinion is this man is a complete fraud. His global warming thing. Look, it's. Abby Hoffman once said, I believe it was Abby Hoffman, radical activist of the 60s, one of the Chicago Seven, which in fact was raising all kinds of cane against what? The Democratic Party at the Chicago Convention. He said, the truth is not what you say, it's how many people you can say it to. That is why, but look, here's the good part. Most people, if given a choice between, do you want to face a brave new future with flying saucers? Beam me up, Scotty. Everything you could possibly want. Anything, everything. Longevity beyond your wildest imagination. Health and vigor and energy and intelligence beyond your wildest dreams. But you will not be completely human. In fact, you may have to forfeit your soul for it. And I don't mean necessarily in a biblical reference. I just mean you don't have one anymore. You just do what you do. And you experience these things like in The Matrix where he says, I know this meat doesn't exist, but I'm tasting it and it's juicy, it's delicious and all that, but I know it's not real. You want that? Or do you want to roll the clock back to about 1935, 1830, something? And go forward. And what I mean by that is, Wells, you're talking about typhus and cholera and diphtheria and the milk sickness and everything. No, I don't mean that. What I mean is, do you want to go high tech? You know what I mean? It's like, which do you want to get a better life? Do you want the excitement of a dangerous and crazy and perhaps you're not really fully human anymore kind of a future? Right. Or do you want to go low tech and shun these things and try and amplify your humanness and let technology proceed that way? Let the function follow the form this time.
Well, it's funny, John, because this morning I'm reading headlines and I'm looking at this, and I mean, this is playing out like a bad Twilight Zone episode here. Justice Department launches government sanction against gun owners. Lefties target Christian homophobes in NBA. Mother targeted because she homeschools her son. House Democrat, all criticism of Obama is straight up racist. Supreme Court refuses to uphold the Constitution, permanently allowing the indefinite detention. I mean, of course, the NDAA was revisited. It was quashed. Oh, police can now search your cell phone without a warrant. Pennsylvania Supreme Court rules cops no longer need warrants to search your vehicles. Man arrested for criticizing Islam. Supreme Court refuses to challenge NDAA. Scientists discover proof that humanity is getting dumber, smaller, and weaker. White House wants Chinese-style system for Internet users starting in May. I mean, political correctness reigns supreme, as we were talking about before, but I mean, these headlines are out of a sci-fi, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And you know what? It could be that it is simply, it may be simply that it is written that we should have to follow this path, that we should have to have risen and advanced ourselves as far as we can, climbed as high as we can, and now we're going to fall. There's going to be a sudden stop at the bottom, like with every fall.
Yeah.
It could be that that's the case, but if we really do believe that we were given free will, then like the old Dr. Seuss story, you may have read to a kid or something at one time about the turtle who wanted to be king. So he made all the other little turtles stack on top of each other. You remember that?
Yeah,
and then the turtle on the bottom burped, and his burp shook the throne of the king, and it toppled down, and he's the king of the mud now, because that's all he can see, because he wanted to get up there on top of everybody, and he'd be king of all he surveyed. Well, there are really people out there that believe this, and we can't believe it because we're not like them.
Right.
We don't think like thieves because we're not thieves. We don't think like psychopathic murderers because we're not psychopathic murderers. That's why we'll go to a horror picture or see a horror picture and go, golly, that's just awful and disgusting. Well, if we thought that way all the time, it would be normal. It would not be disgusting or anything of the sort. It would be just thoughts as usual, But we're not like that. People must understand this can be reversed, but it's not going to be as easy as one might think. In other words, if you go to protest a war, you have to be prepared, or to protest anything that's big, you have to be prepared to be killed, and yet at the same time you must be willing to kill no one. That's in the course of civil disobedience, but I would also say, now that we see these police being militarized, and I got a letter from a policeman today out there in California, and in fact I may read the whole thing on the show and just leave his name out, because things have changed for police since before the grants were given to put 100,000 new police officers on the streets. Well, now they're killing homeless people like those horrible pigs that beat that kid Kelly Thomas to death out there in California. And another one, I saw him get shot in the back. He's got his hands up, and his back is to the cops, and they shoot him. Then there was this thing we ran on the show yesterday that was police dogs chasing this guy, and they just shoot him, just shoot him all to hell, and he's dying, reaching skyward on a nice, warm, and yet cool California day on the beach underneath the palm trees, and we watched this guy die. It made one of the crew cry, and it was a guy. It almost got me going, too. I felt more like throwing up than crying, frankly, after this. And it made me so angry I could barely contain myself. And I said this on the program, that you're going to kill the wrong person one day, and this violence that you have visited on others is going to be visited on you. The police have to police themselves. Oh, really? Who watches the watchers? When the police police themselves, that's a problem. We have forgotten everything. You've got all these people in here taking anything that was actually worth learning from a philosophical standpoint. Philosophy is the study of what makes a good life. Plato, Socrates, all these guys, and a few girls too. So the thing is, if you don't teach that stuff, and if you limit people's vocabulary to the point that they can't even express a thought because they don't have the vocabulary to support it, this is the beginning of the end. And Michael Savage, I saw a dog and it barked at me because I scared it. That's actually a perfect Michael Savage.
That is
I love
Mike
Savage.
Savage.
I've never spoken. I just like him. I think he's a genius. I think he's extraordinarily strident, but I still like what he said. Borders, language, culture. He is absolutely correct. And all this weed everywhere, it's like these people are sucking down these blunts now because the media has publicized. They couldn't just quietly legalize. It's like, pot's legal in Colorado. No, they've got to make a big. I'm sorry. Can you hear the national anthem playing in the background?
No.
That's the national anthem. Do you know that? The thing's 1,000 yards away. Because the media got a hold of this. Yeah. You see these people, I'm sorry, they're probably nice kids individually, but they look like morons. That's what the long O, morons. Yeah. Sucking down these huge blunts of genetically engineered weed that's not even like it was back in the hippie days that they're trying somehow to return to. And they're sucking this stuff down. Savage said, for example, that, people go out there and smoke the Hawaiian marijuana. He goes, you're idiots. Don't you understand those are volcanic islands and that there's mercury in that soil and you're getting the mercury in you when you smoke the weed? It's like, I was out in Hawaii and went to the premier studio out there. Nobody'd used it in 2 years. And I said, I'll do it. Never been to Hawaii. I think I'll go. And I spoke with somebody out there about it, this hippie guy, and he said, oh, no, dude, some guys grow that stuff, and it's not legal out here like people think it is. You can get a lot of trouble for growing it or having it on you or anything like that. I said, really? I thought it was just wide open. He goes, nah. He said, but we don't grow it in volcanic soil anymore. We haven't for years now because we use potting soil. So even they're wise to it. So in other words, kids are trusting other kids to tell them that this drug won't hurt you. And I was a rock and roll disc jockey, and I assure you, I inhaled. However, when I saw what was going on around me, I just something just came over me, and I just sort of withdrew from that whole scene. I just showed up for work, did my shift, and left, and got some pretty good ratings, I might add. The thing is, I met Peter Fonda one day. Met him down at CBS Television City when I was doing the Late Late Show with Craig Kilborn before Ferguson came on, who, by the way, is actually funny.
Yeah.
And I was doing all that in the news and being the announcer for the show, and I ran into Peter Fonda one day. He was going to be a guest on the show. So I introduced himself, and I said, Mr. Fonda, it's nice to meet you. He said, no, call me Peter, please. And I said, something that you wrote or said, and then it was written in this book, was it was titled Easy Rider, but this was a paperback, and it contained a lot of narrative, but also the script to the movie was in it. And he, it took him a minute to remember what this was. And I said, what you said was this: I smoke a joint, and 1,000 little men ask, what am I missing? And that really stuck with me. So, see, when you put it on TV, well, that's a big deal then, because, well, it's on TV. But if Colorado had just quietly just decided to legalize this stuff and that's it, that would have been the end of it. And you wouldn't have seen all these disgusting displays of people sitting around getting blasted on weed. Like, no offense, don't mean any offense against girls. It was like a girl who's just turned 13 years old. She discovers that phone in a new way. It's like, this will allow me to communicate with the entire world. Well, she's been using the phone since she was 5. But when she hits 13, this phone has become something special. And so it is when any kind of a little story like the pot thing or the gay thing or the racist thing, as soon as it hits the mainstream media, it becomes a great big deal, whereas before it was not a great big deal. Who cares how much of an idiot Donald Sterling is? Is it legal that conversation was recorded? And I didn't hear him say that. I'm not supporting him in any means. I think he's monstrous, and I think his girlfriends, his company, are equally monstrous just based on appearance alone. Not to criticize any of the Lord's creatures, but please. They look like some of those chicks in The Devil's Advocate. They would grin and they get all. They look borderline possessed, and he does too. But question number one: who cares? Are you there for the lifestyle of I love the team owner and his girlfriends? Or are you there to see a basketball game? Why do you care what Kardashian's doing? Why do you care? This is a perfect example of how stupid it is. I just saw this deal where a girl goes down to Brazil. She lives in Brazil. She doesn't go down to Brazil. She lives there. Saves up all her money so that she can have her bottom increased in size to about triple. And she's going to have 20 extraordinarily painful shots, and sometimes these operations are fatal. But because of the Beyoncés and the Kardashians and the Snookies and this and that, now these girls think that they need to have big bottoms to be appealing. Now, what kind of mentality is that? Look at all the people that went after plastic surgery. I've just got to make myself more beautiful. Well, look at them now. Some of that plastic surgery didn't work out too well, and they've made themselves look monstrous. So is it vanity, or is it just a desire to belong? I think there's a real fine line between the desire to belong and vanity. Well, I kind of need to keep up appearance. I kind of need to dress well. I need to drive a little bit better car. Put off the appearance at least that I've got something going on. Like Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, played by Eastwood in Heartbreak Ridge, said, I want you high and tight by 0600, because when you look like Marines, you'll begin to feel like Marines, and then maybe, darn it, you'll act like Marines. There's a fine line between that and I want to cut my hair high and tight so that I'll look fierce.
Right.
That's vanity. But to belong and to be regarded as professional and to act professional, meaning you're worth being paid, because that's the only difference between an amateur and a professional. Is an amateur's not paid. They do the same work, pro, but the pros pay. Sometimes the amateurs are better than the pros. So we really have to make what you call, I hate to use this term, but I will anyway, a quantum shift in our philosophical approach to our lives. As it stands now, you're looking at a government who has done the numbers because they got nothing to do all day. nothing to do all day but crunch the numbers and look at the trends. And they decide which trend is their friend. What they want to do is they want to suck 20, 30 years of productivity out of you, and then they want you to die. They do not want you to live to be 85 or 90 or 95 or any of those things. They don't want to pay your pension. They don't want to furnish you health care. They want to get the productivity out of you that they can during your prime years, and then they would like for you to die. That's where we are. The hypocrisy. University of California at Santa Cruz had an article on GMOs when I was talking to Dr. Thierry Vrain of France, and they're talking about GMOs and how beneficial they are. We can feed the world. The hypocrisy is then they'll turn around and support, these same liberal morons will turn around and support an Agenda 21. Well, wait a minute. What happened to wanting to feed the world? Well, no. We've got to have sustainable development. Well, what do you mean? Well, some of our heroes like Bill Gates and this one and that one and the other one, they feel like there are too many people on the planet. It's like, so, well, if Bill Gates walked up to you with an AK and a few magazines, would you go and, like, depopulate some of the planet yourself? Some of these people are so, as we say in Texas, eaten up with it, actually go, well, if it's in furtherance of saving the planet, I could commit to such a quest. In the meantime, I'll toke some of that because it's legal now. So at the end of the day, you go, okay, Wells, go ahead, pop off. You now have the ability, John Wells, to make an idiot of yourself in front of the entire world. And there's no place in the world that you can go where there won't be some iris scan or facial recognition, some technological device to rat you out that you are in Pago, and even the Pagoans think you're an idiot too, okay? On account of the things that came out of your mouth. We are dealing with things on a spiritual level. I don't think we're dealing with men, just men and women alone. I really think that there is an unseen force, battle between good and evil, that none of this makes any sense whatsoever. If this is not the story of good against evil, it's meaningless.
Again, like I said at the beginning, that movie, The Bug's Life, they might all stand up. What a concept, John. Thank you for coming on this show. I really encourage everybody to grab a subscription. They're very reasonable. He has excellent guests. There's never a dull moment. Give it out again for the folks, John.
It's caravantomidnight.com. Thank you for being so wonderful to me. You just let me go on, and I really appreciate it. Please come on to my program, and then I'm going to sit back and let you go on and on.
That is a deal, my friend. Audience love a man with a voice. That is something. See, that's why we let you go on and on. Everybody just wants to listen to it.
Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, John.